We have heard your cries for help, and soon we will answer. Who are you? Don't you recognize us? We are not your friend. We are not your enemy. We are your salvation.
Destiny's story is one entwined in perspective. It's shown to us from the clashing of ideologies, from the pre-Golden Age to the City Age. It shows us constantly that one way of thinking does nothing for us overall. It doesn't allow us to grow or improve. What it allows for is stagnation. But how far is too far within any philosophy? Is there a limit? Should there be a limit? Should the weak flowers requiring so many nutrients to grow be able to blossom in a field of weeds? Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and before we get going too much, I do want to announce that the results are very much in. The Eris video has won for the next major topic we'll look at. Before that, however, I wanted to bring up another topic that's been on my mind, and we all know how this YouTube thing is anyway, with needing to post things in a timely manner. That said, I wanted to look into the words that the form at the end of Shadowkeep left for us, along with how our ghost was manipulated into saying what it said. I'd like to go down each point and give counterclaim to what the voice tells us, giving reason for why it very well is full of crap, or at least could be viewed as such. Again, this is the idea of perspective as an overall idea within Destiny's lore. Bear in mind that my vision of Destiny is one that's mired in the story and lore of this game, however, and there are several stories that curve my perspective to feel a certain way about things. In particular, there is the continued and storied saga of the Last Word, Thorn, Shinmalfer, Dredgenyor. You know the tale. This tale, in particular, holds a lot of truths and perspective, to me, that overshadows the conversation had with the voice. I don't think I really need to dig into the whole of it, of this tale, of this very prominent story within our lore of Destiny. There are pieces, new as they are, that are worth bringing up, but that's for another time entirely. Please stop playing that drinking game. You all know I say a story for another time far too much. No, put down the bottle. Anyway, before I get blamed for someone doing something stupid, let's move on to the first point. If anything, consider this more of a thought experiment than much else. But I think it necessary to see the counterpoint in all of these statements.
Violence, beauty, truth. These things await inside. There's no turning back now.
Well, it's true there's no turning back, because I'm not seeing a lot of ways to go back out. In fact, I'm still trying to figure out how we left the pyramid after everything was all said and done, and we talked with the voice and so on, but anyway. I do find it funny that the entryway we pass through has ghost-like similarities to it, however. There's some stuff going on in the unveiling book that I need to get to at some point, but there's not much else to talk about here. This is the setup. This is them claiming what we will find. It's up to us to see it. What we see past this opening sequence is what I would argue as a point of manipulation, as the voice and force on the pyramid attempt to work into our minds to make us doubt everything that we could see before. I can't help but feel that's important to understand. It also kind of rings true with something I just thought of with Pujari as well, because he also felt doubt with his visions inside of the Black Garden previously. I find that a little interesting.
The Red War saw so many lives lost. Saw the light taken away so easily. In light, there is only weakness.
The events of the Red War are important to remember here, and this is where I feel we can start to pull the supposed truths we are given apart. Gaul had a mission, to steal the Traveler, or at least steal its power. He did so by clamping the Traveler into a shield, sealing us off from the light entirely, and making it so that he didn't really have a lot of forces to contend with, save for one lone Guardian. All of our factions warned of something coming, and something happening to us at one point or another. Future War Cult envisioned a point where the city was in flames. Dead Orbit knew of the Cabal's signal, and of Gaul's assault coming back and taking King. That was 2 years even prior to Destiny 2 and the vanilla campaign. New Monarchy did something, I'm sure. Boy, I really gotta lay off on the New Monarchy fans, huh? Anyway, these visions and this knowledge were given to us by the information we've gleaned from the Traveler, and it's sharing information about the light with us. That's a really roundabout way to say that we built a seeing device to manipulate timelines, and we're able to receive a signal from deep space thanks to the equipment that we built, but that equipment might not have been possible if not for the Traveler and the knowledge that it gave us over the light. And while the Traveler is not light itself, it is the aspect of it, the thing that allows us to see into this paracausal notion at the very least. I should sum this up a bit better, I guess. The Traveler gave us the gifts with which we were able to prepare and adapt to what was coming, even if it too was also a beacon for the darkness to fall over top of us, but eventually it would have reached over to us anyway. I mean, obvious, there's a pyramid in the moon, it was watching us. Even then, the Traveler didn't abandon us, as this voice claims. After all, we still had our powers given to us after we fought through the waves of enemies in the EDZ. We still had a chance. So too did the light. And to also say the light was taken away so easily, well, Gaul isn't the only one to display the power to seal the light, or at least to keep it away from us. I can think of a certain scruffy-looking coin flipper that has something special about his ghost, along with a place that he visited as well. In addition, of course, the Hive were able to do that to the first Crota Fire team, but we now know kind of why, especially with the pyramid and so on underneath the moon. Though I will say it being a battle of Roy G. Biv is a little, well, too predictable. Anyway, point 2.
The light abandoned Cade, left him for dead, and kept him from being saved.
Let me tell you how little I like this line. The light didn't abandon Cade. He pushed to what he felt was a necessary battle and knew if anyone could get there in time, it would be him. He has this habit of being someone that tries to take the fight on himself, and sure, that led to a not too favorable outcome for Cade. And besides, I think all of us know deep down, if Cade was going to go out, it was going to be on his terms, his way. This, like the previous point, is devoid of the details. It views the large message. It views the large occurrences. It views the event, but it doesn't view or explain the happenings within that event. Take, for instance, you go to a house party. I know this is completely off the rails, but bear with me with the analogy. Say there's about 10 guests or so around. The fact that the house party happened is what the voice is looking at, along with any large, noticeable functions of it, but it lacks the knowledge of the little details. Say 2 people fight at this house party, but later figure out they have a lot in common. Suddenly, that fight, which the voice may have said was, well, the worst and most tragic thing about the house party, what started as a bad circumstance for these 2 turned into something more beneficial about them, and they were able to grow and understand one another past that. The voice knows about Cade's death. Doesn't know what killed Sundance, Cade's ghost. Doesn't want to acknowledge how his death fueled a rage within us that caused the great Shin Malfur to pause. Does it even know of Shin Malfur and handed down legends? Does it care for how we learn from another's failure, another's falter, in order to grow brighter than before? I'd really argue no, especially as we look forward to point 3.
One by one, Crota slaughtered many Guardians. The light stood by and did nothing, and a great disaster ensued. In light, There is only death.
Some might say this is the one that has the most sense from this voice, right? As much as I'm not entirely for the light and never will be for one pragmatic dogma over another, I understand that in everything, life and death falters. Some may say that death is permanent, but the question is, in what way? Take, for example, the philosophers of old. Suddenly, they're able to pass down all of their thoughts and ideas, and it can be challenged up against time for all eternity. Are they truly dead? Their bodies are gone, but are their ideas? This starts to get a bit philosophical, but bear with me here. All of us fail. All of us screw up at some point in time or another. Heck, I know I can just use this channel as an example of how I've failed and screwed up in my life. When I was building up, when I was at my peak, I faltered. I let the crap in my head get the better of me. But I've learned from it. I pushed on from it. I've attempted all that I can to not listen to it. And I say this confidently, knowing that anyone that's attempting to push past their general limits knows precisely what I mean when I say that. Guardians voiced their opinion on it being a bad idea to go up to Luna to counter the Hive after they first found them, to first fight Crota. Shax especially said it was an awful idea to rush headfirst at the Hive without more knowledge. Hubris got the better of us. In the Golden Age, and the Dark Age with Siva, the Iron Lords, the Warlords. Hubris also got the better of Crota, and Oryx, Axis, the Fanatic, Uldren, Riven, Atheon, and any other name you want to add to the list of our enemies. The Light, or at least we as humanity, with the help of the Traveler, have started to fight against this supposed constant disaster. We still make mistakes, and we still have issues. For the most part, we now have learned to come back from those issues and stay alive. But it doesn't mean we're perfect. I mean, look, Anna Bray didn't die, but she sure could fake some death, am I right? Just to drive this point home, if I haven't made it more obvious, what it almost feels like the darkness is saying here is that they're almost perfection incarnate, that there is nothing that they falter on, and I can't see that being totally true. It would mean that they figure out all their mistakes even before they make them. That's kind of problematic, especially to any philosophy that's untested. Anyway, to the last part here, which is what we all heard at the top of the show, and I'm sure many still have rattling in their heads from the close of Shadowkeep.
You made it. We have heard your cries for help, and soon we will answer.
Let's pause here, as I'm still kind of confused about this cries for help business, because I wonder if it's interpreting our want to live and push against whatever life has for us as a want for release in a sort of kind of dark way. I mean, look, none of this is going to sound kosher, okay? This force wants to end us for some reason, and end us for the general purposes of the game that the light and dark are playing. This is really sounding more and more like Gurnlog, and the more and more this story passes on, I swear, I just have to look at the darkness when I see it and ask it one question.
Who the hell do you think I am?
I've got a bit more of that hubris to talk about here, but let's cover that in the last bit.
Who are you? Don't you recognize us? We are not your friend. We are not your enemy. We are your salvation.
The real kick in the teeth would be if these pyramid ships are actually not the darkness. I mean, I know that's probably not the case and Bungie's done pulling our strings for now, but I've been hurt so many times, I just can't trust you anymore, Bungie. Jeez, this is sounding a lot like my last big breakup. Never mind. As far as that hubris business goes, it's basically this statement in its whole. I'm glad that it doesn't try to identify as a friend or foe, but when all's said and done, it makes you wonder why it pairs up with forces like the worms and the hive to begin with. Even then, it makes me wonder about Callus and how his general placement is there to manipulate our Guardian into getting the ultimate stash of loot and then letting it all go just for Emperor Tacky Pants to take it over at the end of all things. Yeah, that's questionable. But the statement that catches me a bit off guard is the first part more than the ending. Don't you recognize us? This has several different implications, but let's look at each. First, it means this as our guardian, or it could mean this as our guardian, as it has pulled up manifestations of our battles before with Gaul, the Fanatic, Crota, Scolus. It may be talking about us in particular, but these battles were not just the focus of our guardian. In many cases, like Crota, Gaul, and Scolus, they were the focus and problem for the Sol system. To ask us if we recognize it, however, is to assume it knows we've seen them before, either in Mara Sov's throne room, from the invitations of the Nine, or from some other source. I would also find it funny if our Guardian, in their first life, had talked to these visions before, and knows of the darkness from our past. Another reason to not hunt our past as Guardians, wouldn't you say? The other way along these lines is that we were talking to another one of us from another timeline entirely, one that is fed up with our shenanigans and knows that we can't be saved or can't really do what it is that we're trying to do, and they just want to interfere in everything. But I find this one to be very far-fetched. The last option I see is us in general, as humanity. Don't we recognize the darkness as it's visited us before? I mean, it cost us a lot of hell and our lives were allowed to continue thanks to the sacrifice of the Traveler, but that's the only piece I wonder on that end. Any of these three options can possibly work. I also won't say that they're the only three, as I'm sure that my limitations and my thinking are what's stopping me from thinking of more. If you guys have any others, of course you can post them in those comments below. In essence, though, I wonder more about the last one, about it addressing us as humanity's representative. It seems to have no knowledge of the details of our civilization once again. It seems to assume we know exactly what it is and exactly what it's going to do once it arrives, which is to save us from ourselves or the cosmic game of life. I mean, our sun's gonna blow up eventually, so why bother keeping us around, right? Seems to be more their game. But per the details of what we know, most of us have forgotten about the darkness. No one seems to be able to quote any piece of it, just that it was, and that's all. No identity, no knowledge of what it was, just that it was, and it caused us a lot of grief and suffering. There are some reasons why I truly do not fear and am in no way enticed by the words, the visions, and the pyramid gives us, but it's not the whole story. My perspective, my beliefs, my truths. I just feel like I've been prepared for these words that have been said to me by this vision. I'm unsure if that's true. Obviously, I still have questions. Obviously, I am not the writer here. But I am someone that has paid attention as best as I can. But now is the time that I leave my thoughts to rest, and I attempt to return to writing up the script for Eris and her psychological breakdown. If you're interested in hearing about that and assume the subscribe button will work because, again, YouTube, then there's that. If you had a certain way you felt about my thoughts here, you know those buttons too. But below, in those comments, let me know what you guys think of this as well. What other views and opinions do you have of the words that are said here? Because that's all that we've gone over today. My words and my opinions. I also want to try something that we did a while ago. And if you got to this point but aren't sure what to say, just leave my truths in the comments below. I have a feeling some of you know where I get that statement from already, but I can't cover all of that in just one episode. To all of you, no matter when or where you are, I'll see you next space time. Take care.